Welcome to the deep dive. You know, in our world today, problems aren't just complex. They often feel, well, overwhelmingly intricate. We're all looking for that smarter way to work, right? A clear path to cut through the noise and ultimately to consistently generate real value through truly adaptive solutions. That quest, that's exactly what we're diving into today. We're embarking on a deep dive into Scrum, not just a methodology, but a lightweight framework. It's specifically engineered, really, to help teams tackle those complex problems head-on, delivering results that actually matter.
Exactly. And for this journey, we've pulled together a unique stack of your sources. We're drawing insights directly from the latest 2020 Scrum Guide, but also from recent discussions and some foundational articles by Michael Vizdos. He's an expert with, gosh, over 30 years in this field, so a lot of experience there.
Okay, great. So our mission today is crystal clear then. We're going to navigate the core components of Scrum, sort of dissect its underlying philosophy, and hopefully reveal some powerful, maybe even surprising insights that are crucial for, effective implementation in the real world. So let's unwrap this framework together and see what practical wisdom we can uncover for you. So let's kick things off right at the very beginning. How does the Scrum Guide itself actually define what Scrum is?
It's pretty concise, actually. It's defined as a lightweight framework that helps people, teams, and organizations generate value through adaptive solutions for complex problems. Think of it maybe like this. Scrum needs a Scrum Master to foster an environment where a product owner orders the work into a product backlog. Then the Scrum team turns a selection of that into a usable increment during a sprint. And then, crucially, the Scrum team and stakeholders inspect the results, adjust, and...
Well, then you just repeat.
Okay, repeat the cycle.
Yeah. What's really interesting here, though, is that Scrum is described as simple, but also purposefully incomplete.
Incomplete? How so? Well, it's not a flaw. It's actually seen as its greatest strength. It means the framework gives you robust guardrails, sure, but it deliberately leaves the how up to the collective intelligence of your team. So it's adaptable, not some rigid prescriptive rule book. It's really about enabling that emergent wisdom.
That incomplete and adaptive part really grabs my attention. It sounds less like a strict checklist and more about like a core way of thinking. So day to day, how do teams actually make that work? What's the underlying theory driving those adaptive solutions?
Yeah, good question. At its core, Scrum theory is based on two really powerful ideas: empiricism and lean thinking. Empiricism, basically means knowledge comes from actual experience and decisions are based on observing real outcomes, what you actually see happening.
Right, based on evidence.
Exactly. And lean thinking is all about, well, ruthlessly cutting waste and focusing only on what's absolutely essential. And that combination lets the framework use an iterative, incremental approach, which in turn really improves predictability and gives you pretty robust risk control.
Okay, iterative and incremental.
Which brings us neatly to the three empirical Scrum pillars: transparency, inspection, and adaptation.
Ah, yes, the pillars.
They're deeply connected. The sources really emphasize this. Inspection without transparency is misleading and wasteful.
Makes sense, right? Totally. You can't fix what you can't see clearly.
Precisely. And just as important, inspection without adaptation is considered pointless. You can inspect all day long, see what's wrong, but if you don't act on it, if you don't adapt, what's the point?
It's just observation then.
Exactly. And this adaptation part, by the way, it gets significantly harder if people aren't genuinely empowered or self-managing within their team.
Right. That makes sense. We've touched on the mechanics, the theory. But for me, what makes frameworks like this truly compelling is how they connect to, well, human behavior. I'm really curious to hear how the Scrum values fit into this picture.
Oh, absolutely. You're spot on. There are 5 core Scrum values: commitment, focus, openness, respect, and courage. There's a handy mnemonic sometimes used: FORCE. F-O-R-C-E.
Force. Okay.
And these aren't just, nice words on a poster. They actively give direction to the Scrum team's work, their actions every day, their overall behavior. And they directly reinforce those empirical pillars we just talked about: transparency, inspection, adaptation.
How so? Can you give an example?
Sure. Like openness and respect are crucial for transparency. Courage is needed for inspection to talk about the tough stuff. And commitment and focus are key for adaptation, actually following through on changes. But there's a critical point from the sources here. While trust isn't formally listed as one of the 5 Scrum values, it's explicitly stated, and I mean really emphasized, that without trust, none of this works.
Okay, trust is foundational.
Absolutely foundational. Think about it. Without trust, transparency just crumbles because people are afraid of blame. Inspection turns into finger pointing instead of learning, and adaptation. It gets resisted because nobody feels safe enough to actually change course. So, trust. It's like the invisible glue holding everything together.
That's a powerful point. Okay, so we've laid out the framework's foundation, the theory, pillars, values, that essential trust. Now, let's maybe zoom in on the fundamental unit of Scrum, the Scrum team itself. It sounds quite simple in structure. One Scrum Master, one product owner, and developers.
It is structurally simple, yes. But a really significant shift in the 2020 guide was moving away from thinking about rigid roles and instead emphasizing dynamic accountabilities.
Accountability is not roles. What's the difference there, really?
It signals a focus on what needs to be achieved, the outcomes, rather than just job titles or who does what. And within a Scrum team, there are no sub-teams or hierarchies. That's important. They're designed to be cross-functional, meaning they have all the skills needed, design, testing, coding, whatever, right there within the team to create value each sprint. And importantly, they are self-managing. They decide internally who does what, when, and how to best accomplish their work.
Okay, self-managing. And they're kept small.
Yes, typically 10 or fewer people. This keeps communication lines short and makes them nimbler.
All right, let's unpack those specific accountabilities then. Starting with the product owner, or PO. What does it mean to be a really effective PO?
The PO has one primary accountability: maximizing the value of the product that the Scrum team builds. They're also accountable for effective product backlog management. That means things like developing and clearly communicating the product goal, creating and clearly ordering all the product backlog items, and making sure that backlog is transparent and visible to everyone involved.
Got it. So setting the direction and prioritizing.
Exactly. And Michael Vizdos, in the sources, highlights 3 absolutely critical attributes for a PO. They must be available 100% with no multitasking.
Wow, 100%. No multitasking. That's tough in most places.
It is, but crucial for focus. They also need to be truly knowledgeable about the users, the market, the product domain. And maybe most critically, they must have authority to say no.
Ah, the power to say no. That really hits home. Why is that so vital?
Imagine a PO who can't say no to every new request or stakeholder demand. The team gets pulled in a million directions, right? They lose focus, can't deliver effectively. Saying no protects the team's focus and the product's value.
That makes perfect sense. It reinforces that focus value we mentioned. Okay, so moving from the what and why the PO to the how, who exactly are the developers in Scrum?
So the developers are essentially the people on the Scrum team who are committed to creating any aspect of a usable increment each sprint. And it's really important to clarify, developers isn't just coders. The guide is clear. It's anyone who's on the team that's contributing to getting the work done.
Okay, so designers, testers, analysts.
Exactly. Anyone building the increment. Their specific accountabilities include things like creating the plan for the sprint backlog. They're responsible for instilling quality, which means adhering to a clear definition of done. They need to adapt their plan each day towards the sprint goal. And really importantly, hold each other accountable as professionals. It's a team effort.
Right, pure accountability. And finally, the Scrum Master. How do they fit into this whole dynamic? What's their accountability?
The Scrum Master is accountable for establishing Scrum as it's defined in the guide. And crucially, for the Scrum team's overall effectiveness. They're described not as managers, but as true leaders who serve the Scrum team, the product owner, and the larger organization.
Serve. How does that look in practice?
It means coaching the team in self-management and cross-functionality, helping everyone stay focused on creating those high-value increments we talked about. It means actively causing the removal of impediments, anything slowing the team down, and ensuring all the Scrum events happen are positive, productive, and kept within their time box.
So facilitator, coach, impediment remover.
And guardian of the process, yeah. But there's a critical pitfall here, one the sources strongly warn against.
Oh, what's that?
Having one person try to wear both the product owner and Scrum Master hats.
Ah, trying to do both jobs.
Yes. The feedback is pretty blunt.
Yeah.
You will get burned, and I have not seen it successful at all.
Why not? What's the conflict?
Well, think about it. You're trying to maximize product value, pushing for more potentially, while also trying to protect the team in the process. They're fundamentally different stances, pulling you in opposite directions.
I see. It's an inherent conflict of interest almost.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
There's also a challenge, maybe a lesser one, but still there, when a Scrum Master tries to also be a developer on the same team. They can easily lose that essential focus on enabling the whole team. And they might start, inadvertently giving solutions instead of helping the team find their own.
Right, stepping back into doing instead of enabling. Okay, that clarifies the team dynamics and potential pitfalls. So we've got the foundations, the team, but how does this team actually move from ideas to tangible value? That seems to be where the Scrum events come in. The sources call them the heartbeat of Scrum, right? Where ideas are turned into value.
That's a great way to put it. The sprint itself is the main container, that fixed rhythm of 1 month or less. And inside that container are all the other events.
And why are these specific events so important?
Well, they're deliberately designed to create regularity and to minimize the need for meetings not defined in Scrum. They provide a predictable cadence.
Fewer ad hoc meetings, hopefully.
That's the goal. And it's crucial to understand, as the guide says, failure to operate any events as prescribed results in lost opportunities to inspect and adapt.
Missed checkpoints, basically.
Exactly. You risk drifting, missing feedback, delivering less value. These aren't just meetings for meetings' sake. They have very specific purposes tied to empiricism.
Okay, let's walk through each one then. It all seems to kick off with sprint planning. What happens there?
Sprint planning is a really collaborative event. The entire Scrum team is involved. It tackles 3 key questions. First, why is the sprint valuable? This discussion leads to crafting the sprint goal.
The objective for the sprint?
Precisely. Second, what can realistically be done this sprint? This is where the developers select items from the product backlog they believe they can complete. And third, how will the chosen work get done? This is where the developers create their actionable plan for turning those items into an increment.
And the PO's role in planning?
The product owner ensures attendees are prepared, maybe discusses how the work maps to the product goal. Others can be invited to, experts maybe, just for advice.
Okay, planning sets the stage. Then we have the daily Scrum. This one's famous for being short.
It is. Just 15 minutes. An intentionally tight time box for the developers.
And why only 15 minutes?
It forces focus. Its purpose is purely to inspect progress toward the sprint goal and adapt the sprint backlog as necessary. It's a quick sync-up and planning adjustment for the next 24 hours. And crucially, it is not a status report for managers. It's not about ticking off the, what did you do yesterday, what will you do today, any blockers checklist.
Okay, so what is the focus then?
The focus is sharply on what are the impediments to meeting the sprint goal. How are we progressing and what do we need to adjust today to hit that goal? It improves communication, surfaces problems fast, and enables quick decisions.
Got it. Quick, focused, adaptive. Then at the end of the sprint, we have the sprint review. This sounds like more than just a demo.
Oh, much more. Its purpose is to inspect the outcome of the sprint and determine future adaptations. It's explicitly called a working session, not just a presentation.
A working session. So interactive.
Absolutely. The source material stresses that the most important outcome is actually the feedback from your users and stakeholders, getting their hands on the increment, discussing what's next.
Oh, that feedback directly influences the future.
Yes. Based on that feedback, new insights, maybe market changes, the product backlog might be adjusted right then and there. It steers the product based on real learning.
Okay. Inspect the outcome, adapt the plan, and finally, there's an event just for the team. The sprint retrospective.
That's right. The retrospective is strictly for the Scrum team, no stakeholders allowed. Its purpose is all about to plan ways to increase quality and effectiveness. It's about improving the team itself.
How do they do that? What do they look at?
They inspect how the last sprint went, regarding individuals, interactions, processes, tools, and even their definition of done. Basically, how did we work together? The goal isn't to complain, but to identify the most helpful changes to improve its effectiveness. What's one thing we can change next sprint to be better?
Just one thing.
The sources suggest focusing on just one improvement idea often increases the chance it actually happens. Make it actionable. These improvements can even be added to the next sprint backlog. And there's this idea of it being perspective, too, not just looking back, retrospective, but actively planning forward for improvement.
I like that. Continuous improvement baked right in. Okay, that covers the events, the rhythm. Let's move on to the Scrum artifacts. These artifacts represent work or value, and you mentioned they're key for transparency, right? Making the work visible.
Exactly. Visibility is crucial for inspection. And what's really a key concept emphasized in the 2020 guide is this. Each artifact contains a commitment to ensure it provides information that enhances transparency and focus against which progress can be measured. So it's not just a list or a thing, it's tied to a specific goal or state.
A commitment for each artifact. Interesting. Let's break those down, starting with the product backlog.
Okay. The product backlog is described as an emergent, ordered list of what is needed to improve the product. It's dynamic, always evolving. And it's the single source of work for the Scrum team. Everything starts here. It's commitment, that's the product goal.
The product goal, what is that exactly?
Think of it as the North Star or the long-term objective for the Scrum team. It describes a future state of the product that they're working towards. It gives context to the backlog items. A product itself, by the way, is defined broadly as a vehicle to deliver value. It has boundaries, stakeholders, etc.
Got it. North Star. Then there's the sprint backlog. What's that composed of?
The sprint backlog has three parts. The sprint goal, the why for this specific sprint, the selected product backlog items, what they plan to do, and an actionable plan for delivering the increment, the how. And it's very much a plan by and for the developers. They own it during the sprint. Its commitment is the sprint goal.
So the sprint goal is both the outcome of planning and the commitment for the sprint backlog.
Yes, exactly. It's the single objective for the sprint. It's not just a collection of tasks. It's a cohesive goal that provides focus and flexibility. It encourages the team to work together rather than on separate initiatives to achieve it.
Makes sense. And finally, the increment, the actual result.
The increment is a concrete stepping stone toward the product goal. Each increment adds to the previous ones. It's thoroughly verified, meaning it meets the definition of done, and critically, it must be usable.
Usable, so it provides value immediately.
That's the idea. Value shouldn't wait until the very end. And it's worth noting you can actually create multiple increments within a single sprint. An increment can even be delivered to stakeholders before the sprint review if needed. The commitment tied to the increment is the definition of done.
Ah, the definition of done. Tell me more about that.
It's a formal description of the state of the increment when it meets the quality measures required for the product. It's the shared understanding of what done actually means for an item. And here's a powerful line from the guide. The moment a product backlog item meets the definition of done, an increment is born. It's not some future state. Quality is built in.
Wow. Okay. Increment is born. That's clear.
And one final but really crucial point the sources make about all of this, the framework itself is considered immutable.
Immutable, meaning you can't change it.
Essentially, yes, they state very clearly. While implementing only parts of Scrum is possible, the result is not Scrum. Scrum exists only in its entirety. It functions as a complete container. You can add other techniques within Scrum, but you can't really subtract core elements and still call it Scrum. It's a holistic system.
Right. You can't cherry pick the easy parts.
Yeah.
Okay. So we've really dug into the mechanics, the pillars, the team, the events, the artifacts, the commitments. But now let's pivot to something you touched on earlier, something the sources really highlight as critical. This difference between just managing Scrum and truly leading Scrum. There's a big mindset shift needed, isn't there?
Oh, absolutely huge. The sources are, let's say, pretty direct about it. Trying to manage Scrum using old-style command and control management practices is flat out called a delusional fantasy.
Delusional fantasy. Strong words.
They are. It means trying to dictate tasks, micromanage the team, control outcomes directly. It just doesn't work with Scrum's principles of self-management and empiricism. Instead, the focus must be firmly on leading Scrum. And a key aspect for leaders here is understanding they are not responsible for controlling outcomes directly.
Okay, if they're not controlling outcomes, what are they responsible for?
Enabling the team, building capability, fostering the right environment. And a cornerstone of this leadership is trust. They must trust your team. As one source puts it, without trust, you are stuck doing the same thing, because you'll never empower them to find better ways if you don't trust them.
So the leader's core job then becomes what the sources say. To set up the organizational system so your teams can focus and deliver. It's about creating the conditions for success.
Exactly right. It's about enabling that environment. Because ultimately, Scrum is fundamentally all about communication between people. Good, honest communication. That means fostering environments where those vital conversations can happen safely. Even the really difficult conversations about prioritization, which are essential.
Without that openness, transparency breaks down again.
Precisely. And adaptability stalls. It all links back.
And this connects beautifully, doesn't it, to Michael Vizdos' core philosophy, the one he boils down to focus, #deliver.
Yes. It's this powerful, almost counterintuitive idea about doing fewer things simultaneously in order to actually increase your overall productivity and impact, being deliberate, cutting the noise.
Focus, deliver, doing less to achieve more. Wow, what a deep dive we've taken into Scrum today. We've really unpacked its fundamental definition, haven't we? grasped that underlying empirical theory, explored the 3 pillars, seen how those 5 core values ground everything in human behavior. Then we dissected the distinct accountabilities within the Scrum Team PO, Scrum Master developers, felt the rhythm of those key events, planning, daily Scrum, review, retrospective, and understood how the artifacts and their commitments, product goal, sprint goal, definition of done, ensure transparency and that crucial focus.
Yeah, it's clear Scrum is a robust framework. It's powerful for tackling those complex problems we started with. But as we've seen throughout this discussion, its true strength isn't just in the rules or the structure. It lies in implementing it holistically and really embracing those underlying human elements, trust, open communication, courage, and that constant cycle of inspection and adaptation.
So let me leave you with this thought to mull over, something building on what we've discussed. The sources, especially Vizdos, really emphasize focus, #deliver, if that's the ultimate aim, and Scrum provides this framework. What does it truly take for you, in your context, to embrace doing less to achieve more? How can you genuinely empower your team to do the same, even when, maybe especially when all those organizational pressures are pushing for constant busyness, for doing more? Something to think about. We really encourage you to explore these concepts further. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive today.